but at least it was in the mutual interest of both countries to at least talk to each other. Today, if I suggest that we talk to our potential enemies, that they think this is heresy. But, you know, we have 12,000 diplomats in our services, in our government. I'm suggesting that we make them work a little bit. Why don't we practice a little bit? Foreign policy and stopping the wars and bringing the troops home and taking care of our own business, saying, oh, you're an isolationist. You don't want to deal with the world. But the truth is I'm not an isolationist. I don't want to intervene in the internal affairs of other nations. But that's just, you know, a wise choice. I would like to trade and travel and deal with other countries. Matter of fact, the more we do, the founder said, the more you trade and talk to people, the less likely you are to fight with them. And this is true. Once we started talking with China, even though they turned out to be our banker, which is sort of an unusual consequence, but, you know, we started talking to them and trading with them, and now we're not shooting and killing each other as we were when I was in high school. So, in contrast, we never started talking to Castro and to Cuba. I mean, if we'd have talked to him a few decades ago, our influence would have been subtle. You know, the people there would have said, hey, we'd like to have the prosperity that Americans have. But because communism always failed and was failing there, Castro could always say, oh, it's America's fault. They put on all these sanctions. They won't let medicines and food come into our country. So we were always the scapegoat. And inadvertently, we actually propped up Castro. But things have changed now. They're nothing like they were in the 60s. So I think it's time we talk to the Cubans, trade with the Cubans, and travel back and forth to Cuba. Of being in isolation, they're the ones saying, no, we can't do this, and they're the ones who are most anxious to put on tariffs and sanctions, and we did that with Iraq for a long time. My first speech against the Iraq War was in 1998. We had a resolution on the House floor to change our policy with Iraq. The intent was regime change. It is now the United States policy to change the regime of Iraq. Not a bad idea, but it's not our responsibility. It was the Iraqi people who should be responsible for changing their regime. The agitation build, and they were always looking for this opportunity. And I remember reading the book from the former Secretary of the Treasury under Bush. In their very first meeting, Paul O'Neill wrote, the very first meeting in January 2001, the first thing on the agenda was, when are we going to go into Iraq and take out Saddam Hussein? He was flabbergasted. What are we talking about? So there was all this agitation and planning, and actually he lost his job over his dissent on that and his shock of what they were doing. But the opportunity arrived after 9/11. When 9/11 occurred, of course, this was a tragedy for us, and it was, I think, a consequence of bad policy, and that had something to do with it. But Iraq, we went over there as a consequence, and that was the excuse, but they had to even build the case stronger. So they had to fib, some people call it lying, and they said, oh, he has nuclear weapons, he has weapons of mass destruction, and he has Al-Qaeda in that country, and build up the case. Finally, people in the Congress went along with it. And look how long that took. And it isn't over. This idea, do you think that war is over? It isn't. It's really just in a pause right now. There's lots of reasons. About the most serious and unintended consequence that has come out of the Iraq War is we have turned it over from a Sunni-run government to a Shiite-run government, and now they are allies with Iran. We are pushing them eastward. We're pushing them into the hands of the Iranians, and the Iranians are in the hands of the Chinese. When we are expending our wealth and many lives telling people that we have to impose our will on others and dictate and pick all the dictators of the world, Here, this country that was so hostile to us, China, and had these communist theories, they're making money after selling our stuff. You know what they're doing with our money? And they're going to do it more so because they're going to be getting out of the dollar. They buy up natural resources. They invest in Iran. They invest in Afghanistan, where they're fighting and trying to restore order there. At the same time, they're investing. They're investing in Africa. At the same time, we're moving troops into Uganda and Somalia, and it seems like it's never ending. And we've been all through the Middle East. We've been involved a little bit in Tunisia and Libya and in Egypt, and now and of course Iraq and Afghanistan and Pakistan. We're in and out of there. We've created civil strife there. People are fighting with their government. But I always argue that it's a tragedy that what we offer people is either if we can hire a dictator, we'll give him money, we'll give him foreign aid. But if he won't do it, then we'll bomb the country. And I suggested an option, talking to people, and I thought there were only 3 options. But I finally figured it out. With Pakistan, there's a 4th option. You can prop up a dictator because we're still sending them $1 billion. At the same time, we're bombing them too. And then the people get angry at us and angry at their government and their civil strife, and we wonder why there's civil strife over there. So we would be a lot better off with a new approach, a different approach, and a willingness. If we could talk to Khrushchev and actually Stalin and Mao Zedong and all these ruthless people and get by with it. And if we could resolve the conflict of the Cold War when we each had thousands, the Soviets had 30,000 of these nuclear missiles. Today, people want to go to war against Iran, start bombing that country. They have no proof whatsoever that they're even close to having a nuclear weapon. And the other day, I came across something, AEI, which is the organization where the neoconservatives really, that's their big think tank, and they sort of agitate for this type of activity. The individual that was writing this article for them, I think her name was Pletka, and she says, one thing that really could backfire on us. She says, what if the Iranians get a nuclear weapon and don't use it? She thought that would be a tragedy. She thought this would be horrible because that would prove that they're not nearly as bad as we say they are. So she's worrying that they'll get a weapon and not use it and act more responsibly. And that's the kind of thinking they have. I would like the Iranians not to have a nuclear weapon. Matter of fact, I'd like to see most of the world have a lot less nuclear weapon. But there's an Iranian group in this country. We have Americans that have come from almost all the countries of the world, and I think that's very good. But this American Iranian group said that what I'm talking about is it's actually right, because the threats or a bombing of Iran, it totally destroys the anti-Ayatollah movement within the country. Because you know how we felt when we were attacked. I mean, we weren't Democrats and Republicans and independents. We were attacked. We all are together and say, why did this happen? What are we going to do? And how are we going to repel it? And how are we going to prepare for it? And they say every time we threaten and they think they're going to attack, the Ayatollahs get stronger. So if there's bombing, their whole effort to undermine the Ayatollah and change their government would be undermined. So it's maybe well-intended. I try to give people the benefit of the doubt, but sometimes it seems, out of control and unreasonable. Because the other argument is, maybe there's people in our country that would like to get the oil. Could that possibly be it? It seems like we go into countries more when they have oil. We've been involved in that all the way back to 1953. This is when we installed the first dictator in Iran, and the Shah lasted about 25 years. And that, incited the radicals. So the radical Islamists threw out the propped up dictator that we put in. So there are ramifications. There is blowback. And a lot of people misinterpret what I say about what happened on 9/11, but very clearly it was so tragic. But I just point out that a different foreign policy might have diminished the incentive. I don't believe people are going to come over here, commit suicide to prove that we're rich and free. They And they say, well, where'd you come up with this crazy, un-American idea? Well, one place was Paul Wolfowitz. Paul Wolfowitz, right after 9/11, he had this perfect statement that I could have written. He said, the 9/11 Commission confirmed this, Wolfowitz confirmed this, the CIA confirmed it, the DOD has confirmed it. What Paul Wolfowitz said was, we can close that base down now in Saudi Arabia because the base in Saudi Arabia was a good recruiting tool for the Al-Qaeda. So this is the architect of the war saying that this was one of the incentives. But why should that be so difficult? I just think that we should follow more of a golden rule. Don't do anything to another country that we wouldn't have them do to us. We're just at the beginning or maybe toward the middle, but the bubble was predictable. They've been predictable. The NASDAQ bubble was predictable. We never can predict when they'll burst, but it did, and they created another bubble with the housing, and that was predictable, and that finally burst. But there's still the bubble now going on with bonds and the dollar. But since 2008, the people have recognized that there's something seriously wrong because a little bit of inflation and spending and government intervention hasn't done much to reassure the people that we're back on a sound footing again, because we're not. We're really broke. And this is why there's an impasse in Washington. All this talk, all they're doing over there now when they talk about closing the gun shop and passing the bill, all they're doing is looking to find out whom to blame. Who's going to get all the blame for this? Which party is the president going to get the blame? Democrats in the House, Republicans in the House, because they won't admit we're broke. And that's why if we're broke, if you're broke, and you owe a lot of money, you either declare bankruptcy, or if you're more honorable, why don't you cut back on your spending, work hard, get another job, live with, a little bit more reserved and pay off the bills, and you can get growing again. But burst that has to happen in order to get back growth again. It's just like you as an individual. You have to liquidate your debt. But governments don't want to do that because politicians don't want to have to explain it to the people, and sometimes the people don't understand that they don't want that to happen. Before 1929, that's what happened. There'd be these bubbles form. We'd have our hands off. That'd be corrected a year. The special one that this was 1920, 1921. Lasted a year and it was over because government they allowed the liquidation of debt and they allowed prices to adjust. But in the 1930s, the Keynesianism started and they say, we have to prop up everything. We don't allow prices to go down. And it took 17 years. It took till after World War II for that to be settled. Japan had their prices probably 20, 30 years now. They've been in the doldrums because they kept all their bad debt on the banks, and they're insolvent, but they won't admit their assets aren't worth anything. So they haven't resolved that, and they've never come back with economic growth. Now we're into some people think the fourth year since 2007. I think that we've been in the doldrums longer. I think the NASDAQ bubble was the real signal of us having trouble. And if you look at statistics, you can verify that the standard of living, real income, has gone down for over a decade. And that is in contradiction to what has happened over most of the 20th century. Incomes would tend to go up in spite of all our problems and imperfections. Incomes tended to go up and wealth and prosperity went up, but not since the year 2000. We have 30 million new people in our country since the year 2000, but no real new manufacturing jobs. The manufacturing jobs have gone overseas. If you count employment the old-fashioned way like they did in the 30s, our unemployment rate is 22%. And the government tells you, it was now it's 8, you better feel good because we've cured all your problems and we don't have a recession going on. And then they say, don't worry about inflation, we have that under control, and that's why we can still print the money. But tell an elderly couple that's on fixed income or Social Security that their standard of living isn't going down. They have a tougher time paying their bills, paying food bills. Food bills are going up, energy bills are going up, repair bills are going up. Their inflation rate might be 12%, and they're getting ripped off. But inflation hurts some groups more so than others. And the people who get the money first have the benefit. When it circulates, prices go up. When the prices go up, that is a tax. You don't blame the people for gouging, or you don't blame labor unions for saying the labor costs are too high. What you do is you say the money isn't buying as much, and that is the problem. When I started medicine, when I went to medical school and to college, my education wasn't very expensive. It was like $300-400 a semester. And it wasn't hard to get a job. And we could work on weekends in the summer and pay our way through. Today, education costs so much because we pump money in education. Does the quality go up? No. The quality of education doesn't go up. The number of people graduating might go up. But what else goes up? Debt. The students are graduating with $1 trillion of debt. That's more than credit card debt. And the worst part about it, the students, were lulled into this. Well, I got to borrow, I got to get it. The government's going to give me this money, and I can pay it back. But now they don't have jobs. It's a real mess. I like the old days in the sense that it should be cheaper. You should be able to work your way through college, and the government should be out of the business. I did practice in medicine in the private sector a bit, and that was before any government medicine. I practiced in a church hospital, and people paid what they could, and nobody was turned away. I made $3 an hour. I was still young. I was learning. When I finally got into medical practice at the end of 1968, my office call was $5 a visit. I think you pay more than that right now. Besides that, then you have to wait in line or you wait in the office. And that's a mess. I could spend an hour on the problems with medical care, but I do not believe the government is the solution. I'd like to restore the responsibility on the individual and the doctor-patient relationship. Very briefly, though, I think what has happened in so many other industries, whether it's the banking industry or whatever. I think we have ended up with corporate medicine, and the corporations are very, very much involved. And when there's reforms in Washington, whether it's prescription drug programs that the Republicans want or the Democrats want Obamacare, guess who the lobbyists are? It's the corporations, it's the drug companies, it's the insurance companies, and it's organized medicine. And everybody's trying to protect their position rather than reinstituting the principle that maybe we could work out, with medical savings accounts. But it doesn't solve the problem because the corporations end up making a lot of money, and the responsibility then is deferred, and everybody gets charged the most right now in order to collect the fee because costs are up and there's inflation, and then the people say, we don't have enough money, send me some money. So if the answer is strip more money and send it to people, it doesn't do anything about quality, it doesn't do anything about distribution of care, it just pushes the prices up more. The solution, and I think this is what is probably very important of the last 4 years, the American people are waking up. This is what I'm observing. I think they're tired of what they've heard from the two parties. They get promises, and if the Democrats promise one thing, then they get in and they act like Republicans. Republicans promise something, they get in and they act like Democrats. But the people are upset, they're getting angry, and they're speaking out, and I think it's very healthy. We have a Tea Party movement, we have an Occupy movement, and people are saying we've had enough, we don't want to be ripped off anymore, we want to do away with this crony corporatism, and we want to restore individual liberty for each and every American citizen. Is that right now I don't see the answers in Washington, but I see the answers outside of Washington, and now we have to transform Washington. One individual or a few individuals in Washington that may have these same views really can't do it. I'd like to say that all you have to do is one person, and that is all there is to it. But government is a reflection of the people. If the people want war, endorse war, and believe the propaganda that we have to be in every country, you can't wait till we start a war with Iran and then the Straits of Hormuz get closed and oil doubles in price. If you think that, no, an individual like myself, I can't achieve what I would want. In the same way, if people think that we can have welfareism from cradle to grave and not work our way out of it and try to take care of people who need the help, it's not going to work. But this is what I sense is changing. And a lot has changed in 4 years. You know, I ran 4 years ago. The reception was good. But it seems to have accelerated because now the American people are tired of the wars. They're sick of the unemployment. They're sick and tired of the government bailing out the big corporations and the banks. And they're ready to see some real changes in Washington. If we did the right thing, we'd still have another year or so to go through some problems, to have the adjustment, the liquidation of debt. But if we would have done that in 2007, it would have been over. We would be back on our feet again. I am convinced, I have so much faith and confidence that a free society works better than anything else. We had the best taste of it in this country, and I'm afraid we're going to let it slip away. But if there was only one thing I could give you, is to guarantee your liberties, which means your right to your life, to run your life as you choose, to keep what you earn, to engage in any social or economic activity that doesn't hurt anybody else. You don't defraud people, you don't steal from people, you don't hurt people, you don't hurt anybody else's property, you protect the environment. If we could give that to you and you had no money and tomorrow you could go to work, I think you would be a very happy and very prosperous person at the end of 1 year. Be called a sacrifice. A lot of people say, well, we have to do this, A, B, and C to get out of this, but everybody has to sacrifice. But if you get your liberty back and the right to keep what you earn and to use your property as you see fit, I don't see why that's a sacrifice. The people who seem to think that they're going to sacrifice and promote that tale are the ones who want your money. They're the ones who want to bail out. Yeah, they should sacrifice, not us. People have always had to live under tyranny. Ancient tyrants and modern tyrants. And in many ways, the way we're moving right now with the Patriot Act and now the assumption that the military can arrest us and put us in military camps and be denied an attorney? That's what the law says now. And the president has announced that he can assassinate American citizens. I mean, that is what has to be reversed. We have to know what a free country is all about. Now, I would opt for freedom even if I had to live with less physical goods. But the magnificent thing is, if we have our freedom, we're going to have our freedom and we are going to have more prosperity. So we should be able to sell this because it's such a wonderful thing. If you had to live with less, but you end up with less when you say, the government's going to take care of it. And the government is us. So if somebody wants something, they have to take it from somebody else. They have to steal it. And what happens, that encourages powerful special interests. That encourages the people who can manipulate government. And they've been doing it, so we're coming to an end. We're coming to an end. The Occupy movement, and as well as the Tea Party movement, is an expression of the people's desire to reverse this. And it's something that is going to require people coming together. So I honestly believe that freedom does bring people together, because freedom doesn't mean that we judge each other on what we do if you're not going to impose your will on us and you're not going to use violence and you don't steal from somebody. So what you do with your life should be your business. And if we allow that in religion, you can have your own choices. We don't tell people what they should do with their religious beliefs. We don't tell people what they should do with their intellectual pursuits. So why should we tell people what they should do with their own bodies? I think one of the other